friends, it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be making a card using Lawn Fawn's Hey There Hay Rides, Hey There, Happy Harvest, Happy Village, and Jump for Joy. So I've stamped the images I'll be using on some Spectrum Noir Ultra Smooth Premium White cardstock with Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink, and I'm going to be coloring with my Copic markers. So I'm going to start with the skin for my farmer and these little kiddos, and I know I've pulled out 4 shades, but I'm actually just going to be using 3 shades per person, but I just wanted 2 different skin tones. So for the farmer and the girl on the end, I'm using E00, E11, and E13, and then the other 2 kiddos I'm using E000, E00, and E11. Just adding that shadow up under their hairline and blending down toward the bottom of their faces with the lighter shades. And then I'll give them all some rosy cheeks using R20, just that 1 shade since it's super tiny. It didn't really need to be blended out. Then I'm going to move on to their hair, and once again I'm going to use 5 different markers, but I'm going to use only 3 shades for each of the kiddos and the farmer. So for the girl on the end and then the boy on the opposite end, I'll be using the darkest 3 shades, which are E55, E57, and E59. Again, starting with that darkest, the E59, and laying in a little bit of shadow and some texture in the hair, and then blending out with the E57 for a mid-tone. And then I'll soften everything with the E55 for a little bit of a highlight. Then for the farmer and the girl in the middle, I'll use the lightest 3 shades using the E51, E53, and E55. And actually on the girl, I ended up coloring everything in with just the E53 and E55, but I did add a little bit of that E51 into the farmer's hair. So just a really easy way to get some different looks using the same exact marker shades. I'm also going to continue using these browns to do anything else that I need to be brown. So I'm going to do this little pumpkin / corn maze sign, which actually comes with different things that you can stamp in there, but I thought that these would be fun. And on that I used everything except for the E59. So I started with the E57 and just use the next 3 shades going lighter. So the E57 blended out with the E55 and then the E53 for the pole, but I did add a little E51 into the sign where it says pumpkin corn maze. And then for my tree trunk, I'm going to use the darkest 3 shades. So started with the E59, blended out with the E57, and then the E55 was the highlight. I'm also going to do the slats on the wagon, and this time I'm starting with the E55, blending out with the E53 and then the E51. I had to check the die to see if the bottom is actually wood or if it was supposed to be open space, but it does not cut that bottom one out, so I went ahead and colored that brown like the rest of everything. And then I wanted to give the farmer some little brown boots. I used the E59 for those. I'm also going to do the twine that is binding the hay bale together using the E59, E57, and E55. And then I'm going to use those same shades to color in the farmer's hat with just a tiny touch of that E59 blended out with that E57. And then the E55 once again for the highlight on the brim and the top of the hat where the sun would be hitting it the most. Next I'll work on the hay bales, and for those I'm going to use YR21, YR23, and YR24. This is a nice golden yellow combo. It has a lot of brown undertone in it, so I thought this would work well. And I'm starting at the bottom with the YR24, blending up with the YR23, and then using the YR21 for a highlight. I'll also do the hay that is sticking out of the little barn and the hay that the kids are sitting in on the wagon. So you can color this to be grass or hay or whatever you want, but I thought it would be fun to do a hayride because I wanted to do a fall themed card. Also, the sentiment that I'll be using later on includes the word hay, so I wanted to really emphasize that with the images that I was using in this little scene. So yeah, I think this color combo works really great for hay or also some fall leaves or whatever you want to use it on. Then I'm going to move on to my tractor, and I kept hearing that song Big Green Tractor in my head, so I had to go with a traditional John Deere, and I'm using YG03, YG05, YG06, and YG07 for that. To be honest, I probably could have gotten away without either the YG05 or the YG06. They're very similar, so you probably could skip one of those if you don't want to use 4 shades. But I started with the YG07, added a little shading here and there, and then started to blend that out with the YG06, just carrying that in toward the center of the vehicle or toward the top edge over the wheel well, any place where the sun would hit it. I wanted to have a bit of highlight, so I went ahead and left some space for that. I blended out with the YG05, which you can see it's very similar to that YG06 as I'm laying that in, but the YG03 is quite different, so I did go ahead and throw in a little bit of that just to give it more of a yellow golden tone in that green combo, which will tie in with the hay. And I also decided to do the bottom part of the wagon to match the tractor. So I'm just going to repeat that process, but this time I'm going to skip the YG05 in this combo. There wasn't room for all 4 shades, and I did want to include that YG03 in there, so I just skipped the YG05. And then while I had those markers out, I also decided to do the leaves and stems of my pumpkins. So I started with the YG07. This time I actually skipped the YG06 and went straight to the YG05 and used a touch of the YG03 wherever there was room for it. And by the way, I did color many additional pumpkins on a separate sheet of cardstock and a few other images as well. I just didn't want to take too long for the coloring today since there were quite a lot of images because I wanted to create a nice full fall scene. So I just did a second panel of a few things off screen, but I used the same exact combos on those as I did for the ones that you're seeing here. For the trees tops, I used G12, G14, and G16. And I did go back in with a little extra of the mid-tone and the darkest just to really make that blend a bit more smooth. And I'll color the smaller tree exactly the same. So I just wanted to have those 2 greens in there so that the tractor would really stand out on its own, because that's going to be front and center in my card. So I am going to move on to a different yellow combo now. I'm going to use Y02, Y06, and Y08. I wanted something super vibrant to do the wheel wells on the tractor and the wagon, just like a traditional John Deere. So I used the Y08 toward the bottom right, blended up with the Y06, and then used the Y02, and then I did add a bit extra of that Y08 to darken that up. And I'm also going to color in the little shirt and the hairband of the girl in the center just to carry that color in on one other place. And I used the same combos in the same order, but just the darkest 2 on her hairband since it's super small. For the tractor wheels, I'm going to use some neutral grays. I went with N5, N7, and N9. And I'm adding a little touch of that N9 on the edge of each of those tractor treads just to really emphasize those and make them stand out a bit more. And that is a super, super dark color. It's nearly black. I'm going to blend that out with the N7, but make sure that I don't cover those treads completely. I still want to have a little bit of highlight there so that you know, what I'm trying to accomplish actually works. You need to have the highlight in there as well as the dark to make it really stand out. So once I have that N7 laid in, I'll come in with the N5 and start to really blend over the edge of that N7 and fill in any remaining white space on those two tires for the tractor. And once I'm done with that, I'm also going to do the two tractors on the wagon. But this time, because they don't have any treads, I'm just going to do like I did with the wheel well and add that shading down toward the bottom right and blend with the highlight at the top left. No rhyme or reason for that. It's just what feels a little bit more naturally for me to leave a highlight on the top left. Then I'm going to take away the N9 and add in the N3 just to go slightly lighter. And I'll do the bottom rim of the tractor as well as the little smokestack on the front and the roof of my barn. So I put the N7 down in the area that I wanted to be shadowed, blend it out with the N5, and then I'll use that N3 for a little bit of highlight. And it is very similar to the color of the tractor wheels, but just slightly different, which was what I was going for. But if you wanted it to be even more different, you could take away the N7 and add in like the N1 or something like that. So now I'm ready to start my pumpkins, and I wanted to do two different shades of pumpkins since I have so many, especially since I have that additional sheet like I mentioned. So the first combo I'm going to use is YR12, YR14, and YR18. I'm shading those pumpkins in the creases where the lines are drawn with that darkest shade, the YR18, and then blending out with the YR14, and then I'll use the YR12 for the highlight. So this is kind of my more muted combo of the two for the pumpkins. I'm also going to do the farmer's shirt with this combo just to give him a nice fall cozy shirt. And then I will switch to my other orange combo, which will be YR12, YR7, and YR9. This is a much brighter combo. It has less of that kind of brown undertone in it like the previous one. But I'm going to shade the pumpkins exactly the same, using the YR9 in the creases, the YR09, the YR07 to blend it out, and then the YR04 for the highlight. And I did also add a little stripe on the boy's t-shirt with the YR07. And then for the rest of his shirt, I'm going to pull in some blue tones using B91, B93, and B95. So I'll just color above and below that. So he has a little blue and orange striped t-shirt. And then I'm going to also do the farmer's overalls with that combo. So just using the B95 in the shadows and on his pocket, and then blending out with the B93, and then using a little B91 for a highlight in the center. For the barn, I'm going to use R24, R29, and R39. That R39 really adds a lot of depth to this combo because it's more of a desaturated red. So it really goes well with those more desaturated pumpkins or the hay. So we've got a nice mix of kind of desaturated and then more saturated colors in this little scene here. I'm also going to add a little bit of red to the barn door in each of those little triangles. I blended out the R39 with the R29, and then I'm filling everything in very carefully with that R24, making sure to leave the white around the door as it is. I'm also going to do the other little girl's t-shirt to be red with these combos, just to add another pop of that in there. And I will also do that leaf. And I did do some of the other leaves on the second sheet in different shades, but all using combos that I've used on screen for you. I'll use a tiny bit of N1 to add some shading in the creases of the door, and then I am going to trim these images out with their matching dies. So next I wanted to work on my sentiment, and I'm actually stamping that directly on the front of my card. I'm using Hey, It's Your Birthday. I'm stamping that in Blue Jay ink on top of Mermaid cardstock. And then I'm going to open up that card to stamp on the inside. And this time I'm doing Hope Your Day is Filled with Fun, plus that little chicken. Then I trimmed down some cardstock with the stitch hillside borders and the simple stitch hillside borders. The first hill is using Noble Fir cardstock. Next will be cilantro, and then the third hill, which is the one with the simple stitch hillside borders, is out of craft cardstock. And you may notice in this scene that the light is starting to creep on my desk. This happens every day around 4 o'clock, so I need to be done filming before 4 o'clock. But today I got a little bit of a late start. I had been chatting with my son about some things that were on his mind ahead of time, and I ended up getting a bit of a late start to filming today, so I'm working around it. I had to stop a few times and kind of wait for the sun to go behind some clouds in order to finish this video, but I did manage to get everything done, and hopefully it's not too much of a bother. I think that was mainly it, what you saw right there. So I am starting now to lay out my scenes, and I am going to start with the tractor and the wagon because, like I mentioned, those are kind of front and center in my scene. And I'm making sure to add my glue down low on that wagon so that I can tuck in those kids and their little hay that's kind of be poking out. So I'm just going to nestle those back behind the wagon and make sure that those are down securely. Then on that cilantro hill, I'm going to add my barn, and then I'll also tuck in my 3 trees. I have 2 of the larger tree and 1 of the smaller tree, so I'm going to stagger those. I'll put a larger tree next to the barn, and then towards kind of the middle, but over toward the left still, I'll add the smaller one, and then on the far left, I'll add the other large tree. Then I'll take that sign and I'm going to glue that down toward the bottom left of my scene. And I'm going to take 2 of the hay bales and create a little stack with those right in front of that sign, kind of anchoring it in place. Then I am going to start adding the pumpkins. As you can see, it's pointing off the scene toward the left where the corn maze is, where we can't see it in this little scene here, but it kind of creates a continuance of the story and lets the viewer know that there's more going on. And then it's pointing to the right where the pumpkins are, so that's where we need to put our pumpkin patch. So I added the little trios of pumpkins in 2 rows. And then between and beside those, I'm going to add my extra pumpkins, and I'm going to just mix up the colors as well. So I'll have a little bit of a brighter one, and then one of the more dull pumpkins, and then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side just to create some balance, just switching it so that the brighter pumpkin is on the inner part. And then I have all these little curly-cue vines that are from the Happy Harvest stamp set, which I thought would be fun to just fill in some of the space between and around those pumpkins. So I'm just tucking those in the little patch that I'm creating here and there and making sure that they're kind of pointing off in different directions so they don't all look exactly the same. So then I just have those few fall leaves that I wanted to also use to set the scene. So I'm just going to glue those down here and there, kind of filling up any empty spaces that I see and adding little extra pops of color. So since the scene is pretty full, I decided not to add any other embellishment. Also, I plan to save this one for my nephew in Germany's birthday. They live on a farm, so I thought this might be perfect for him, so I didn't add any Stardust stickles, but there is another peek at the inside, and I really hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, please be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Leave me a comment down below if you'd like. I'd love to hear from you guys. And all of the products that I used today will be listed and linked for you in the description bar below in case you'd like to pick up anything for yourself. I'm going to include 2 extra videos here at the end in case you'd like to keep on watching. You can click on either one to check them out. And thank you guys so much for spending your time with me today. I hope you had a good one, and I'll see you soon in another video. Bye-bye.